Hello and welcome to another Talking Tropes mini. I'm David.
And I'm Hannah, and today we're going to talk about season 2 of Kipo and the Age of Wonderbeasts.
Yeah, I,
What,
I mean,
what?
not all of the minis have to be Netflix animated shows, but this is another one, and it also happens to have the voice actor for Glimmer in the starring role as
Yes,
Kipo in the Age of Wonderbeasts.
yeah.
Based on a webcomic made by an animator, sort of as a pitch, but then that webcomic got deleted from all of existence to, I guess, make room for it because DreamWorks is like, no, this is a totally original property. There was no Shrek
So
novel.
original.
There is no, original Kipo.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, sad about the webcomic, but I'm so happy that this show exists because it's truly delightful.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this show is very different from a lot of the other um, Netflix animated shows. It seems to have a much higher budget than She-Ra,
Yeah,
a
certainly.
much more distinctive style than Voltron.
Hmm.
Um, just a lot of really interesting, fun characters. It feels more kid friendly, I think, than a lot of the shows, which seem to be more aimed at like a teen or young adult audience. Um, and I think most interestingly about this one is the. Are you being distracted by something?
Nope, I'm sorry. It's just the rain is so loud right now.
I don't think the mic is picking it up.
I
If
mean,
that helps.
it might not be on the call, but it definitely is on my Audacity. But that's fine.
This weather report brought to you by Talking Tropes Mini.
Yeah.
Um,
It's raining in New York City. It's loud.
uh, well, but anyway, the most important element, I think, is the music, and this is the
Yeah.
only animated show on Netflix that I think really has a strong musical identity.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with that 100%. This show, both the diegetic music and the non-diegetic music is just like absolutely amazing.
Yeah,
Like the soundtrack to it includes both sort of musical numbers performed by the characters, and also just like sick fucking like hip hop beats that are just
right.
like going off in the background. Like it truly is uh probably one of the best scored pieces of children's media in recent history.
Right. I mean, an obvious point of comparison with a show that we've talked about a lot in minis is Steven Universe,
Yeah,
which has more of a light, fluffy, bit tunes kind of feel, a lot of show tuney elements.
yeah,
Whereas this is, it feels much more defined by musical genres that are popular, like pop music, I guess,
yeah,
and
yeah,
and
and well,
and hip hop, and
yeah,
that's cool.
like definitely musical genres, created by and created for people of color, and that's what a lot of this show feels like. It features a predominantly uh like black and POC cast.
Right. I mean,
It's
one of
got
them's pink, but
but she's got a black dad
she's
and an Asian mom, so definitely
well.
not white,
There you go.
you know.
Yep. But I think that is an interesting conversation to have at some other point. Is what multicolored just or technicolor characters and race or
Sure.
something.
Yeah.
Is a multiracial character more palatable to an audience if they are
Pink.
green or some other variety of color not found in humans? I don't know.
Right, right. Well, so for those of you who don't know, Kipo is about its titular character, a young girl who lives in a sort of post-apocalyptic future, where uh,
Giant
animals have sort of,
mutants.
yeah, animals have mutated into either very hyper intelligent beings or just giant crazy versions of themselves, and they're called mutes within the show.
Right. But as you go through
And
it, I think you find that even the giant ones or the ones that seem mindless or the ones that can't talk are also still much more intelligent than your
Yeah,
average animal friend.
for sure, for sure. But some of them are literally capable of like human speech and others are
Right.
not. Um, anyway, the so Kipo and all of humanity spend their life living in like human
Burrows.
clans underground called burrows. And in season one, Kipo gets thrust onto the surface and sort of gains some friends to try to find her family again. And so she finds Benson, who is a kid who's about her age,
Yeah, he's
and
a
Dave.
surface kid. He's always
He's a
lived on the
surface kid.
surface, and he's
He's
cool. He scavenges. He's a scavenger type. And
yeah.
he's got a best friend who's a mute named Dave.
Dave's great.
And Dave's great. He's a bug. I love his ability. I think it's
Yeah.
so creative. He is a bug, so he goes through different stages of pupation or whatever.
Yeah.
And he turns into a baby, a teenager, an old guy, a super powered guy. But he can only hold each form for like a couple hours tops.
Tops.
Um,
Yeah, sometimes he'll go through the whole cycle in like seconds.
right.
And
But
it's a
he's
great show.
essentially immortal,
Yeah.
which is cool. He can never die, but he's pretty much useless, which I love characters like that.
Yeah, Dave is great. And then we also get Wolf, who's a little surface girl who has a tragic backstory and is very kick-ass and is sort of the muscle of the group.
Right, definitely the muscle,
Yeah,
definitely the serious one.
yeah.
Um, and of course, yeah, like all of the conflicts come from, yeah, Kipo wants to do things the amicable, friendly, compassionate way and always see the
Very
best in people.
pacifist.
Right, and she's an optimist, and
Yeah,
Wolf is the pessimist. We have to do things pragmatically. We have to, fear all outsiders, fear all mutes, and there's kind of a bias and bigotry angle to that.
yeah.
And then Benson is sort of the mediator, the happy-go-lucky chum
Right. I would say
who's more
he's the
knowledgeable.
realist. He's the realist.
Okay,
You know,
yeah,
like
he's
he's
the
like
balance. Yeah,
he's there. He wants to have fun and have a good time, which like appeals to Kipo. But he's also like, I've lived on the surface. I know it's dangerous, and will like back Wolf up if he thinks a situation is gonna get out of control. But so at the climax of season one, at the end, they managed to make it back to Kipo's burrow, only for the antagonist of the series so far, a monkey named Scarlemagne.
Mandrill.
Oh,
He's a
excuse
he's a
me,
mandrill.
specific kind of monkey called a mandrill.
Yeah.
He he swoops in and captures everyone, including Kipo's dad. But as this happens, Kipo discovers that she's part mute. Whoa! She's
Yes,
pink
she's
because she's part jaguar,
not
apparently.
just as a creative design choice, which kind
Yeah,
of makes you wonder like why they didn't immediately identify her as a mute. Maybe they just assumed that sometimes people are pink
pink. Yeah,
and have pink eyes and pink hair. But
yeah.
hey, they're not judging until they see that she has fur and
Yeah.
she's a furry. A lot of furries, a lot of cat girls on
This
on
show.
Netflix animated shows. Maybe that's some kind of trend
I
that
mean, I
needs to
think
be
that's
discussed.
maybe that's just anime, though, man. Like,
Right,
it's
but I
nothing but cat
mean,
girls.
right, but
So,
obviously American animation and Western animation and has have adopted a lot of these anime tropes.
oh yeah,
This
oh
was
yeah.
animated by I think a Korean animation studio as well, like Voltron
Mm.
and but anyway, so I mean, what do you really find interesting and what really attracts you to this show as opposed to some of the other Netflix fare?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree with you that the music certainly sets it apart.
Mm.
Like there, it just sort of feels so wholly original, which is also nice. Like, you know, it is based on a web comic, but it's a web comic that was relatively unknown to like a white kind of American audience. At least like I don't know of a lot of people who are like big
No, I
fans
mean
of
it
this.
was it
And
was pretty underground, but the
yeah,
point was like it was basically done, I think, as a pitch. It was a guy, he's a former animator coming off of some shows and some movies that he had been working on. Decided to put together a web comic, and then immediately DreamWorks is like, all right, we'll produce. So I think it was one of those things where it came out of a desire to pitch something.
right.
Um, and animated is where it was always going to end up going.
Totally. But I think because of that, it's so original. Like She-Ra, as much originality was brought to the remake, is still based on an older property. And
Right.
Voltron, same thing. And like this, it's like the character designs are so unique. I've never seen characters that look exactly like this or talk exactly like this. The music entirely sets it apart. And the world itself is just really fun, like this post-apocalyptic kind of adventure world with giant animals and like huge
Yeah.
plants. Like it's just a fun world to kind of exist in, I think, too.
Right. It feels
Like
pretty eclectic and not very cohesive at times.
yeah,
The fact that it's like sometimes I find myself when I'm watching the show saying like pick a lane. Like either there's big animals, there's smart animals, or there's like, puns like the timber cats. They're lumberjacks, but they're
and they're
cats.
cats.
It's like
Yeah.
you can't have puns and then
But you
have like
can.
regular mutated animal. But of course you can. But
It's
I
great.
find the curmudgeon in me occasionally going like, this is too random.
That's the thing, though. At least for me, this show just obliterates my inner curmudgeon. Like it's so joyful and creative that it makes me just sort of feel like a kid again sometimes watching it, which is, I think, what we want when we're diving into this kind of media.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, that each of the animals have these really defined like niches in this world, and that it doesn't really make sense as a like world building kind of thing, but it makes sense from the perspective of this is an interesting episode to write about.
Right, and it's a fun adventure to go on.
Right.
So season two, so season one, I would say tons of fun, lots of musical numbers. We're really being introduced to the world. Season two, which just premiered on Netflix, we're diving a little bit deeper into Kipo's backstory. We're getting some backstory on the villain as well.
Right.
And it's a little more serious, wouldn't you say, than the first
Yeah, I
season?
think like most season twos on Netflix animated shows,
Yeah,
the goal is all right. We've established the characters, we've established their fears and their relationships, and they're all good friends now. So now
yeah,
we need to introduce the major threats. We need to do the big overarching story, and we need to reveal basically all the backstory. Which I think, if there's one thing that disappointed me about this season, is just how freely it gives you information as opposed to dangling a little carrot for future seasons.
okay.
You feel that way?
um I mean, I would say yes, in that I felt like some of the explanations we got were a little bit info dumpy, and felt maybe a little bit rushed. But I don't know. I don't mind like a sort of quick resolution to some of these plots. And in fact, I find it slightly refreshing, especially compared to some cartoons of the past that have decided to drag these things out for season after season after season, and we're like, just answer the question. Like, my patience only goes so far. Adventure Time, like
Right.
it
I think it's
it
obvious
is
that
what it
we're
is.
alluding to Adventure Time as a contrast.
But I mean,
That
I would even
and
say
Steven
Steven
Universe to some
Universe
extent.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But honestly, I really like that mode of storytelling, and I think
Hmm.
it's more adultish. I don't know. That might be very
Eh, I
restrictive,
disagree.
but I mean, I think that just the idea that basically as soon as a question is raised, in the next couple episodes, we're going to get a pretty definitive answer to it is a little bit, it makes it a little bit difficult to keep my excitement going
I think
through
that's
the
fair.
season.
I think that's fair.
Right. So we find out in this season, everything about where Kipo comes from, what her
Yeah.
background is, where her mother is, what the villain's backstory is, how it relates to the hero. We find out what Kipo needs to do to unlock her secret powers, and then she does, and she saves everybody. But there's still challenges for the future. But everything basically feels wrapped up and resolved for what season 2 is. So it makes me feel like at some point in development, somebody said, "This is going to be the last one."
I know. I'm kind of worried, but it ends on a cliffhanger again.
Right. So it's of course not going to be the last one. But I
Yeah.
think maybe at the beginning they weren't so sure, or it was hanging on by a thread until fan responses sort of made people more excited. I don't know.
Yeah, and as far as like fan response goes, I feel like the fan response to Kipo has been very muted. Like I know several
Muted.
people, ah
That
ha
it.
ha ha ha, but yeah. So like people I know who have watched it, everyone loves it, but I feel like because it wasn't based on an already popular franchise, there's been people
Right.
have been a little bit slower to come to it, and maybe slower than the creators themselves wanted. Um,
I'm
but
sure. I mean, I'm sure they
yeah,
wanted it to
yeah,
blow up. I mean,
right.
Shira, I really felt like it blew up. Voltron, I felt like it blew up, even though
Oh
I
yeah.
didn't like it. um, and
Right.
obviously, all the Cartoon Network shows have that built-in popularity because they're on Cartoon Network.
Right,
They're
exactly.
supported
So
by a huge channel. It's a
yeah,
monolith. But
right.
yeah, I think Kipo has sort of struggled to find notoriety, and hopefully, we're doing our very very small part to encourage our friends and listeners to
Yes.
watch.
Like I cannot recommend watching this show enough. If you are looking for something great with a great like group dynamic similar to Avatar, a fun adventure story kind of similar to Steven Universe or Adventure Time, like this is the show for you, and it's emotional. It gets emotional too if that's your thing as well.
Yeah,
Again, also great rep just across the board. POC, queer rep, like it's all over the place.
right.
Wonderful.
I wonder to what extent, I'm always trying to see into the future, but I'm not
Yeah.
a prognosticator. Uh,
You're
but I'm
not.
always curious how like treatments of LGBT representation are going to be looked back upon,
Mhm.
because there so often is just a token character or just a few characters, and they're like their sexuality is often so foregrounded in their
Right.
characterization. Benson is introduced and we get to know him and like him as a character way before we find out that he happens to be gay. um,
Right.
and the way that that's handled is kind of like the Stranger Things model in season 2, which people hated. Um,
Oh, you mean in season 3?
or season 3, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, but whatever. I forget how many of those things there
Did
are.
people hate it? Because I saw a lot of positive feedback
Oh, I don't know.
on
I
that.
just I saw one negative thing, and of course, I assume
Okay.
that's how everybody feels. um, but what I mean by that is that Kipo starts to have a crush on Benson, and then is like, "Hey, Benson, we should go out on a date. Is this a date?" And he's like, "Oh, I don't like you that way." And she's like, "Okay, I understand. I'm
Right.
gay." And she's like, "Oh,
Oh.
okay, I get. Oh, I thought that you didn't like me, but now I understand that it's not me. It's your gayness." Which I don't know how that will be looked back upon in 10, 15 years as a way of having a character come out. Is it too whatever? Is it too
I
on the nose, I guess, that like every character needs to be seen as a romantic interest for the lead first, and then they can come
Mm.
out as gay.
Okay, I sort of see what you mean. Though, you know, I will say in season 2, Benson gets a very cute little romance as a side plot that
Right,
I'm a
but it
big
is
fan
very
of.
much a side plot, and
Yeah, but
that
like that's
character
fine.
is very, very loosely characterized, let's say. He is
Sure,
mainly cute.
that's
That is
fine.
his
How many
main defining characteristic.
There are so many second character, like side character romances where, you know, like Benson's
Of
not the
course,
main
yeah, I
character. It's
wouldn't
not
judge
his
him
story.
more than I would another side character romance. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, like, it is the only romance in the show. And
Yeah.
so it is
And it is
kind
a
of
gay romance.
foregrounded for romance, which is nice, but it is with a character who is just the hot pancake guy or whatever.
Don't we all just want the hot pancake guy? You know,
Yes.
what more can anyone ask for, especially in these trying times?
Waffles? I don't know.
Now you're just talking crazy. Who's got the money for a waffle iron, David? We're in a pandemic.
Speaking of pandemics, I think that the idea of so many children's shows being fixated on apocalypses and post-apocalypses
And
is
revolution.
and revolution, but not so much in this one. I don't think it's not much of a revolution exactly.
Well, we'll see.
More of just it's more of just you're under arrest, king, which I guess is like a coup or something.
Yeah.
But he doesn't put up much of a fight. He basically just tries to just kill all of his subjects, and so
Right.
arrest him.
But I mean, I don't know. I feel like season 3, with our new villain who's been
Right,
introduced, we'll get a little bit more into that territory
right.
and deal with human prejudice a little
Yeah,
bit
that's
more.
true. Human prejudice of mutes,
Yeah,
but of course that's not a revolution either. You know,
that's true.
that's you know, there's nothing to revolt against yet. It's still chaos in this
Yeah.
post-apocalyptic world. It's not like in Adventure Time where you have all these kingdoms that have arisen, and it's not
Hmm.
like Steven Universe where you're fighting against a galactic empire,
Right.
or She-Ra, which was also a galactic empire.
Galactic
But
Empire. Lots of or Voltron. Galactic Empire again.
lots of galactic empires, which are really easy to fight against because you can situate your group as a pair of rebels just going off in the world. But if everything's already sort of anarchic and crazy, like maybe the hero of that story is a great uniter, conqueror figure. But this show is of course questioning that
Right.
it's not necessarily about unifying everyone under a single government,
Right.
because that makes you kind of a tyrant.
Yeah.
I think Scarlemagne is actually a lot like Kuvira in a lot of ways,
Yeah, he's a more
other than being
interesting
a
Kuvira.
mandrill.
Yeah, so this season, so we find out Kipo's backstory. Should we spoil it? Should we go in and tell everyone?
All right, yeah, spoilers from here on out. Yeah,
Yeah. So this is the one where we find out that Kipo was an experiment.
right.
Um, and
I
that
don't really feel too great about that. That her parents experimented on their fetus in order to turn her into a mutant, which was a very risky and dangerous procedure that their child could not possibly consent to.
Right. Well, yeah. And I mean, it was also the idea was to create a new kind of human mute hybrid
Right,
to bring the two worlds closer together.
right. Because
Is sort of
their
the idea.
job was to just reverse the mutagen and save the world from mutants by eliminating them and turning them all back into normal animals.
Right.
But instead, they decided, look, it's actually a good thing that animals have become hyper intelligent. That's a
Yeah.
kind of a cool thing. Robbing someone of their sapience is like
Fucked
dick
up.
move.
Yeah.
So instead, we should be learning to be more like them, be more resilient, which in a Spider-Man movie would make you a villain because you're meddling with forces you don't understand or something.
Right.
But in this, you're a hero because you're experimenting on your child to turn them into Jesus figure.
I mean, it's definitely complicated. Like
Right, but the show
I think
doesn't
it's,
complicate it.
I think it does. You're right. You're right. It's mostly played as this is a good thing, and this is just like why Kipo exists. But
Right. I
like,
mean, Kipo finds out about it and is not even the least bit critical. It's just like, oh, cool. I was designed to bring peace to the world with my amazing mutant powers. It's
right.
great that my parents experimented on me.
Yeah. But then we also find out that Scarlemagne, the bad guy, was also part of these experiments, and
Right.
the parents were, also thought of him as sort of their child that they cared for.
Right.
But when sort of shit hit the fan, and they were sort of found out for all of the bad stuff that they did, and Kipo's mom also developed mutant powers by carrying
Right.
Kipo.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, it kind of makes sense. Yeah,
oh
I'll
yeah,
buy
it's
it.
fine. Pregnancy's weird, man. But so, so both of them are now mutants, and so they try to escape, and they have to leave Dave behind. Is it Dave? Is that the name of the monkey? Or Hugo?
Hugo.
Hugo.
Dave is the
Dave.
bug.
Dave is the bug. Yes. Hugo is
Uh,
the name of the monkey.
Right. But it's like, did he have to leave him behind? Maybe he's partially to blame for this monkey's abandonment issues. And then
Right.
the monkey was obsessed with historical, conquerors and kings, which is why he names himself after Charlemagne, who famously conquered and united France and is kind of like their big foundational figure and their,
Yeah.
conqueror king guy. I don't know. I was expecting there to be more of a philosophical discussion in this show of like anarchy and anarcho syndicalism, like people forming individual self-sufficient communities versus the idea of having, the social contract, which is kind of what's being alluded to with the idea of like you need to give the people a choice before you become their king.
Right.
Yeah, it's like a weird thing where it's like he doesn't need to get everyone's consent, but he needs like some kind of mandate of the mutes to be king of the mutes.
Right. And he sort of plays on a lot of xenophobic fears, like it's us against the humans. And he
Right.
also
He
uses
wants to,
literal
yeah,
mind control
right. He
on
wants to enslave
humans.
all the humans because the humans want to destroy all the mutes, which is most of them do, it seems.
Yeah.
They'd be
Yeah.
perfectly happy with that. And that's the plot of season 3 that we haven't gotten to yet.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I was expecting there to be more of like a direct confrontation between the idea of, look, we should be rebuilding society, and rebuilding society means rebuilding some kind of hierarchy,
Right.
versus Kipo, who's like, can't we all just get along? We don't need a government. We don't need a king or a ruler. We can all just decide amongst ourselves how to be kind to one another and share resources. Uh,
Mhm.
that's what the rats do.
Yeah.
The rats have a free theme park that like the price of admission is just like spray cheese, which I don't know, that might be like rare as gold in this world, but like
But
I don't
still,
know.
they
They're
seem
not racist against humans, they're fine.
they're just capitalists.
No, they're like not. They're not hoarding cheese. They just eat the cheese and they say, "All right, you want to go hang out in our fun peace land? This will be great."
Great, go for it. Yeah.
You got to eat,
The show likes cheese a lot. There's so
cheese
Kipo
jokes.
Kipo, can turn into this jaguar, but we find out that if she turns into the mega mute, the mega jaguar, that she could be stuck like that forever and lose
Right.
control.
Yeah, I mean
Um,
it's a classic, power limiter. If you use
yeah,
this power too much, you'll be corrupted. You
right.
know,
What have
it's
you?
it's Naruto. I mean, there's literally a scene where she's inside of her own mind, and there's water on the ground, and there's a big giant tiger or leopard, looking
Running.
right at her in the
Yeah.
face, and it's literally like a shot from Naruto where he's like,
Where he's staring down the nine-tailed fox.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, no, it's definitely similar. It's not particularly original in that way, but I think it works, as a conflict for the
Yeah.
season.
I find it's just because the power limiter on Dave to me is so much more fun, which is just that he can do it, but only when the plot doesn't need him to do it. He
Right,
unlocks his superpower, and
right.
he can only do it when it doesn't affect the plot. Whenever he tries to use his power, it immediately fails,
Yep, that's
which is
Dave.
great. Yeah.
It's great. But so, early in the season, we have her sort of find these like mentor figures, these like blind goat women,
Right.
who are very much
They
like the
worship
witches.
cheese. They're the
They
weird
worship
sisters, yeah.
cheese. They're the weird sisters. They're very Macbethian, but also very,
The
like the,
fates.
the fates and what have you. Um, and they teach her basically how to like do it in
Mr.
and out.
Miyagi style.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
In
Very
Mr.
Mr.
Miyagi style,
Miyagi.
they're like Kipo make the cheese, and then once she makes the cheese, she can control her powers almost perfectly, except she needs to find an anchor,
Yeah.
which is I mean, I've never seen because usually like the anchor is like a trope, but I
Yeah.
mean it's in almost everything, but it's usually like not spelled out so literally in the narration that she literally
Yeah.
is like, "Oh, I need to go learn more about my past before I can go fight this battle." It's almost like an RPG, like you have
Yes.
to resolve your character arc first by
And
going
then
on
have
this
the boss
quest,
fight.
and then you can fight the boss. But it bothers me that it was so explicit. But I mean, it's a kids show. I mean,
Yeah.
that's it's more direct here, so I feel like kids can latch on to the idea of like finding out more about Kipo's past.
Right.
Something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's very simple, it's very basic, but we go on some fun adventures. We also learn more about Wolf's past. We see
Right.
where Wolf hung out after she was sort of betrayed by the Wolf clan that was raising her for a while. And
Right.
she lived in this like scorpion den hideout.
Yeah. And that's where
You
she
know,
got her scorpion tail staff, which she
yes,
calls Stalky,
yeah,
named after the Death Stalkers,
yes.
which are the names for the big scorpions.
Yeah, they're pretty spooky.
It's fun. Each episode kind of has its own little mini moral, but then on top of that, there's the overarching plot.
Yeah.
I think it all kind of holds together cohesively. I feel like everything makes sense, except for I was really bothered by the character Mulholland, who's named
Okay.
after Mulholland Drive, I think, David Lynch. He's a big water bear made out of a million tinier water bears who can, control people's minds and put them in sort of lotus eater machines. Look it up. Uh, it's a trope where you see your greatest desire,
All right.
but it's a
It's a trap.
trap because he
You'll
feeds off
test it.
brain energy. He doesn't
Yeah.
kill you, but he
He'll
does
just
kind of have to keep you there.
yeah, and then you'll die eventually.
Well, no,
Just
he could
cause.
feed you, but you just would never accomplish what you wanted to accomplish in life.
Right, right.
You'd just be staying inside a fantasy.
Yeah.
So not as bad as some other Lotus Eater machines, but you know,
Not great.
still. But Kipo like convinces him to be a good guy and fight on
Yeah.
their side. But his only power is like mind control, and that's
Right.
also the villain's power.
Yeah.
So Mulholland can just go into everybody's head and stop them from being mind controlled, basically.
I mean, I don't know. I don't think that would work, right?
But he
He would
does it.
just is that what he does?
Yeah, he goes inside of Kipo's mom's brain and is like, I've counteracted the pheromones that Scarlemagne was using to control you.
Ah, let's
Uh,
see then.
and it's a lot. And then I think that's also how they defeat Scarlemagne himself. And there's a there's a lot of defeating the major bad guys by just mind controlling them. And if you were
Yeah.
establishing that that was a very evil thing to do, it's weird to partner up with Mulholland. It bothers
Yeah, I would agree. It's a little bit weird. Um, but this season also introduces the big bad for the next season, and sort of the woman who's low key behind like what happened to Kipo's family and
me.
to
Right.
Hugo, or Scarlemagne himself, Dr. Amelia. Um,
Yep.
she's bad. She
She's
she
real
wants
bad.
she wants to make all the mutes normal and animal like again and rob them of sentience, which that sucks.
Right. It's yeah,
She's a
I
bad
mean
guy.
it's she's the we got to go back. We got to make Earth great again,
Yeah. Make
as
make
opposed to
Earth
moving
human again.
right, as opposed to moving things forward
Right.
and, reaching a new level of cooperation. So, I think, when we're talking about all these post-apocalyptic shows, I kind of alluded to this earlier, but I think we're kind of teaching kids to see everything in our society as it exists now as kind of temporary, as non-essential to being,
Hmm.
right? Do you feel that way?
Maybe. I don't know.
I mean, what
Yes?
else are we supposed to take away from like a show like Adventure Time, or a show, like Avatar: The Last Airbender, where the whole thing takes place after Doomsday, and yet everyone's pretty much chill, and actually the world is like way cooler than the world that we're in right now, and there's better representation in that
Yeah.
world than in our world. It kind of in a way it's the fantasy of society ending rather than the horror of it.
Right, right. I would agree with that. I mean, I think we're also starting to get, though, into I think tricky territory, just because the gap between when Adventure Time came out, and not that it isn't still popular, but like 6-year-olds today aren't gonna grow up on Adventure Time the same way that like people of our generation or just a little like Gen Z did, like, but they might grow up on Kipo and they might grow up on Shira.
But yeah, I
Um,
mean, I also talked about Avatar. I mean, these shows, yeah,
right,
they're like 5, 10 years apart, but they didn't exist always. There
right.
wasn't always a
That's
show
true.
for kids about the world after the world ends, the
Yeah.
world after the empire takes over, the world after the empire falls and chaos
Hmm.
takes over, the
Yeah.
world after everyone is mutated.
Right.
Um,
I
that
mean,
didn't
just
exist always.
I think it's interesting because dystopian fiction saw its big rise in the early 2000s, at least in like young adult fiction.
Right.
And I think,
Probably as a result of the failed promise of the new millennium.
right, right. And I'm less familiar with dystopian fiction for adults. Like I've
Adults.
read some, but I'm less familiar with the trends
Right.
around that. But I think, definitely starting with Avatar and, the slew of shows that were inspired by that, or that,
Right.
took notice of what it could do and got away with doing. Um,
Right. Kipo
between
feels much
Avatar.
more inspired to me by like, the Divergent type series, like, novels about post apocalypse than like the likes of Avatar or Adventure
Even
Time.
Adventure Time? Really interesting. Okay.
I think so. I mean, I think, the very special girl who has a secret hidden power, but she doesn't know something about her past, and she's released into a dangerous world, but immediately makes a couple of key friends, and they learn to survive. I mean, that's very Hunger
That's
Games, it's
very
very
middle grade,
Divergent.
very
Yeah.
middle grade, very YA.
And it's weird to me that all of those novels were adapted as opposed to into animated television shows for kids,
Hmm.
which seems like a natural fit. They were all adapted into gritty, edgy teenager movie things.
Well, so, I think it is only now becoming more and more common for American teens to still be really into
Of
animation
course.
into their teens. Like it's something that has become more acceptable as nerd culture has sort of become more and more mainstream, and as
Hmm.
anime has started to proliferate and sort of show the West that that cartoons don't just mean for children or comedy, that you can have deep, emotional, interesting storytelling happening in animated form.
Right, of
So,
course.
I understand the impulse to make these things live action
Right.
TV
They make more
shows.
money also.
Yeah, they make more money to make them
um,
into movies. You're
right.
just gonna make more, and it's a
But
safe bet for a movie industry that's looking for safe bets
oh,
generally.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But I do want to just point out that I think Kipo is like a great show for kids.
Oh,
I
totally.
think like more than any of the other like animated shows that we've talked about, even I feel like there are some weird problematic things in Shira dealing with abusive relationships, and it's all very adult stuff that's being sort of squeezed into a kid show. This
Yeah.
is like a very hopeful, optimistic kid show to
Yeah.
make you feel better at this time.
Right.
And it does make me feel better to watch it.
Totally. Absolutely.
I think it's something to think about, comparing this to YA fiction,
Yeah.
or middle grade fiction, dystopian fiction.
Yeah. Dystopian fiction for kids. I think
Right,
it definitely resonates with that genre of storytelling
right.
for sure. But I think also another reason that that genre is popular in literature to begin with is because it's so much easier. You don't have to deal with parents.
Yes,
You don't have to deal
right,
with any of the restrictions that would normally keep these kids not being able to go on
of
these
course.
adventures to begin with. Like it
Right.
is just a good adventure land for them to play in.
Yeah,
Um,
totally agree.
yeah.
I, I think in conclusion, check this show out.
Yeah.
What do you have
Wait,
to
hold
lose?
on. Wait, before we do in conclusion, David, we didn't talk
Yes,
about the big twist, the biggest reveal of all.
I missed it. What was it?
The Kipo's mom's the monkey.
Right,
She's
Kipo's
the
mom's the
monkey.
monkey, but I don't know how she figures that out just by looking at a photograph and being like, her fur is brown. Therefore, she is the giant monkey that I talked to.
Well, because her dad said that your mom got stuck as a megamute. And she was like, that
Well,
megamute seems smarter than all those other megamutes. Like, there were some clues. I don't know.
I don't know.
It seemed
I feel
pretty
like most of
telegraphed
it
to
was just
me.
sort of suggested by, the Kuleshov effect, basically. Like, it was, we see a picture of her mom with fur, and then we cut to the Megamute monkey, and then we cut back to Kibo going,
I don't know. I I feel like I saw them telegraphing this pretty early on in the season. I didn't think it was
I mean, I
like
knew they were friends. I didn't. I thought that they were going to, twist on us with her mom, and that they were going to hold off on revealing that information maybe for a couple more seasons,
seasons. No, the monkey's her mom. It was a
or at least a
wild
couple more
twist.
episodes.
Yeah, yeah. There is a giant monkey that she sort of befriends in season one that is being
Yeah,
controlled by Scarlemagne's
right. I mean, I thought it was a
hormones.
much more interesting twist that it wasn't actually Scarlemagne's neck collar.
Yeah,
It was actually Dr. Amelia's using Scarlemagne's pheromones. So
yeah.
that was a good twist. I like that one.
That was a good twist.
It was also a good twist that Benson's boyfriend's dad is cool.
Yeah, he's really
That was a
cool.
good twist.
Was it a twist? It was like fun. I don't know if I'd call it a
I
twist.
don't know. Anything
But yeah.
else before
Well, the
we
season
wrap up?
ends with Kipo and her pals defeating Scarlemagne, freeing the animals. No one has to
Right.
be part of the mute empire if they don't want to be. There's some more fun songs, and then Dr. Amelia takes a bunch of the freed humans and is like, "We gotta get those dirty mutes," and
Right.
that's our lead into season 3. So
Get
we'll
your
see.
hands off me, you damn dirty ape.
We'll see
Yeah.
where that goes.
I'm going to see Planet of the Apes animated TV show
Yes,
with tons of queer representation,
yes.
and, I want it to be good.
That's Kipo. You got it.
Yeah.
You described it. It's perfect.
Uh, all right, yeah, check out this show. What do you have to lose? I mean, if
Yeah,
nothing else, the animation is more beautiful than anything else on Netflix right
it
now,
really is. It's
and
stellar.
the music is it slaps. It just
It is.
absolutely slaps.
It does.
Um,
You're gonna download it or favorite it on whatever music streaming or what have you service that
on
you
whatever or
currently
what
use.
have you,
It's fantastic. You will not stop playing it for at least a week after you watch this show. It's guaranteed. Talking tropes
guaranteed.
guarantee.
All
All
right.
right. We've got
Well,
a
we'll
oops, sorry, go ahead.
well, we've been chugging along pretty consistently for a while now. We hit that 100 episode landmark, and we're feeling
Woohoo!
a little burnt out. So while we are coming up with a new recap series, we were going to take a brief little hiatus.
Yeah.
So tweet at us at Talking Tropes if you have a specific trope idea in mind, because from here on out, everything's going to be fresh. Everything's going to be new. It's not pre-recorded. It's not pre-planned
Nope.
when you're hearing this. So let us know what you're interested in, what you've liked from the past 100 episodes we've done.
Yeah,
If
or
you want
tell
to
us what you
see,
hated. Tell us what we
right?
should never ever do
We
again.
we are
We're
actually
very
really good
open.
at taking criticism. You know,
We
so
love it.
just tell us exactly what you want, and we are under the influence of your pheromones.
Yeah.
We
God.
will do we will do whatever you say. Um, so so
Uh,
yeah, hopefully there will be some kind of poll up at some point,
yeah.
with some options for you guys. But you know, any suggestions are welcome.
Yeah. Like, comment, subscribe, stick your suggestions wherever you want. We're consenting to comment sticking.
Yes.
You
Uh,
guys are great. Check out Kipo, and we'll see you next time in a bit. Bye.
See ya. Bye.